That's pretty weak.
You got it.
So
we can totally do a walk away and come back if you're working this stuff out.
no, that's right. War is a common means to an end. It's decisive and it's destructive, allowing it to the ability between groups to for the means to be quick, but it can quickly lose its purpose. It can quickly lose its purpose and only become destructive, where the only outcomes is the casualties, and progress is no longer being made. This is what Isaac Rosenberg talks about in his poem, Dead Man's Dump. He's taken this as a perspective of a British soldier. He was a British soldier during the time of the British offensive on the Western Front in World War I. This was during the Battle of Arras, which during that time was quickly becoming a success as the British advanced on the Germans on the Western Front. However, it quickly slowed down to become a stalemate. The way Rosenberg writes the poem is the same structure as this battle. It is long and dragged out, and it's almost pointless, just like this war that he was experiencing. The tempo was slow. So the beginning of the poem, he sets it up where the soldiers are just completed or just finished a battle. They're looking at this battlefield that they have to cross, and on this battlefield are just corpses laying around everywhere. But since there's no clear path, all they have to do, they have no choice but just to go over in order to advance. As they're crossing over these bodies, they have no feeling for what is going on, except for Rosenberg. Rosenberg is looking at these corpses. He's thinking about the lives that these corpses once had. He's thinking about the outcomes of the bodies and what was happening to the souls after and where they were going. He also thinks about how the soldiers, the survivors, were affected in this battle. And as he's thinking about this, there's this sense that he wanted to draw out his thoughts, make them slow. He adds 62 punctuations over 79 lines. So there's a lot of pauses, a lot of description. And even then, as he concludes, he takes away from his thoughts and returns to the scenario where they're running over these bodies. He notices that as they're driving, he sees an enemy survivor. He sees an enemy survivor as he's rolling over them. As the vehicle drives over, he hears the screams, and yet he remains emotionally detached, just like the other soldiers. So he takes all this time to describe the victims and the corpses. Again, he was trying to be considerate to these lives, saying how they once had vigorous life, how their life was, as he says, drained of wild honey of their youth. So he's saying that it was something that was to be cherished, but even then, he did not care for what was going on, just like the other soldiers he was with, who probably weren't thinking the same thing as him. So his thoughts were long and slow, but in the end, they didn't affect his thoughts. This was the same perspective of the war that he was in, which had turned into a stalemate. The casualty count was high for the British. It was 160,000 versus the 120,000 lost on the Germans, and yet the Germans were able to hold their defenses for the most part. This ties into the outcome of the soldiers in the short term, that they are desensitized to what is going on. What they look at is these corpses are, as Rosenberg says in the title, it's not a battlefield, it's a dead man's dump. It's so what the soldiers are looking at is more that this is garbage, and it's more of an obstacle to get to their next objective. In the long term, he's concerned when he's thinking about the soldiers and how they're affected. He's thinking about how if they come to grasp of what they've done, the guilt of killing these people, that they do not want to confront that, and it's a fear that they have. But he says that it's eventually a fear that will, as he says, choke their veins and stop their blood from flowing. And so what he says is, what he gives is a representation that they're physically affected from the war, and that's tied to the mental aspect as well, which we would see as PTSD. So in summary, the war is something that Rosenberg sees as almost pointless from his perspective at the Battle of Arras. And it's only destructive as we only see not only the deaths, but the survivors are affected in the near term of being desensitized, but also possibly being mentally and physically damaged or scarred. Thanks.